Alright, so in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to install a Starlight Headliner kit in the ceiling of your car. So basically I started by removing the fabric and the old spray adhesive, and I recommend you guys do this with gloves because the spray adhesive is very tacky, and if it gets on your hands it's going to be very difficult to get off. And so, just clean up really nicely and make sure that there's none left. And so upon adding new fabric and new spray adhesive, you're going to want to start numbering the top of the headliner and make sure that you cover as many fiber optic lines that your kit came with. Make sure that you number that exact number, because you're going to need those to be holes for each and every one of those fiber optic lines. And so that's the end of stage 1. Stage 2 is on its way. And so, stage 2, as I spoke before, basically the amount of fiber optic lines you have is supposed to be exactly the amount of holes that you have drilled into this thing. And so each one of them is gonna have a hole. Each one of them is gonna have a place that they'll be able to emerge through on the other side of the headliner, which is the part that you're gonna actually see. And so just make sure that when you drill, you use a very small drill bit. Like try to get as small as you can, because each fiber optic line is like 1/32 or 1/64 of an inch in diameter, so they're very small. And just make sure their holes are uniform. Try not to tear the fabric, but if anything, just make sure that when you do drill the holes, that you're able to glue them in at the same time. And so that's the end of stage 2. Stage 3 is incoming. Alright, so now that the fiber optic lines are in, now it's time to install the electrical parts that make the headliner light up, which is the light engine. So basically I use 4 screws and 4 nuts to mount this thing. I drilled 4 holes, and basically I put each of the screws in, and I use the drill to drill them in, and I use nuts on the opposite side to hold them in place, because in the headliner you're not going to be able to get around to the other side very often, so you want to make sure that this thing is secure the first time. And so as you can see, 4 nuts. Also, when you choose the screws, make sure that the screws are not too long, because if they do overlap, you're gonna experience issues when reinstalling this thing. So just make sure that the screws are nice and snug, and that they get into the lock nut, but that they don't extend too far past the lock nut, or else you're gonna have issues upon reinstallation. And so I also drilled a hole for the power wire so that it could go inside, so that you don't see the power wire on the outside. And I also cut a relief for the fiber optic lines, the Canon plug for the fiber optic lines, so that they could come through and I could connect it into the light engine. And so this was testing, and for power I'm using my 12-volt battery from my RC cars to power it, and as you can see, it looks pretty good. Now this thing has a RGB bulb and light bulb in it, so it basically turns all different kinds of colors: red, green, blue, purple, orange. It turns all those colors, and it also has animations to them as well. And so that is done testing. It's ready to go inside. And so this little piece of wire that I snipped off here is going to be a part of the wire harness that I'm going to be using to connect this thing to the system of the car upon reinstallation. And so basically you're going to need a soldering iron, you're going to need a wire stripper, you're going to need some dikes, a hot glue gun, and some solder to make this happen. And so basically this process requires a little bit of patience, but the most important thing is just that when you're doing this, strip the wires definitely, so that you can have enough excess material so that if you do make a mistake, you can come back to it and you won't have to take something apart in order to fix it. And so also I wanted to say, as you can see, I dropped a little piece of solder on the fabric of the headliner by accident. I'm trying to dig it off, but it's not coming off because it burns straight through. So if you're gonna do this, if you're gonna, you know, use a soldering iron near the fabric, make sure that the fabric is covered, or just do it. Just don't you know, solder near the fabric because it will burn it. And so, you know, with that being said, also make sure the inside of your car is protected as well, because if you have fabric seats, it will do the same thing. But, you know, with leather seats, you could probably get away, but fabric seats, not so much. And as you can see here, I'm stripping back a piece of wire that I attached to the original wire set that's running from the ceiling inside the car. And I'm preparing that for the connector that we made earlier. And one of the best ways to do this, if you ever go to Ace Hardware or Home Depot, just get some normal electrical disconnects. You can find them all over the place, but you know, they work well with soldering irons and with crimping tools as well. But the main thing that you want to make sure of is just that those connectors fit your wires, because sometimes you know crimping tools only go so far, but if you actually have, you know, parts that match each other well, then that's more important than, you know, actually finding the, you know, than even using the crimping method or even the soldering method. Just make sure all of your parts fit well, and that, you know, you don't have to shoehorn anything or have to force anything to fit together properly, because then you can come into problems. And as you can see, also when your guys are soldering, make sure you put the heat shrink on, or whatever method you're using to connect to insulate the wires on. Make sure put the heat shrink on first before you join the wires together, because if you don't, then you're gonna have to take those wires off again and heat shrink them, and you're gonna have to do that process, you know, over again twice. And so now at this point, the wires are fully ready for the headliner to come in the car, so let's do it. Alright, so now bringing this thing back into the car. It wasn't as easy as I thought it was in the beginning, but it did take a little bit of bending. Like, I had to bend this thing almost into the shape of a letter C in order for it to get inside, and also I had to put back one of my passenger seats to allow it to move all the way to cover the you know, the whole area of the ceiling. But, you know, once inside, I was able to, you know, work with it and get all the wiring, you know, to the top, so that I could actually, you know, begin connecting things to main power. And so I got that long piece attached and I fished it through, and it appeared on the other side over here. And now you guys get to see where those blue connectors come in. And one thing that I remember is just that from the beginning I blew a fuse, so I had to go inside of the hood, find the fuse, and I actually put it to the I actually took it out, I put it to the light to make sure that, you know, it was actually working, and I replaced it with a new one, and as you can see, the lights are on. And so I clipped a little bit of the excess because I had a little bit more of those things of the fiber optic lines hanging down, so I'll just clip them. And now I was able to actually, you know, now that all of the electrical connections were made, I was able to finally get this thing reinstalled. And so, you know, one of the hardest parts of doing this was actually holding up all four sides, that the A pillars, the D pillars, and the C pillars, and all the pillars inside of the car, you know, used for support. And so, like, it was just getting one after the next, and one kept falling down, and when it was another falling down, another one stood up, and then that one fell down, and then it was just a lot of back and forth. But pretty soon I got the hang of it, and eventually I was able to get the headliner fully secure and in place, and I was able to fish all the wires through, and eventually this was the final result. Now, as you can see, it looks absolutely fantastic. When I saw it at nighttime, I was completely blown away. I didn't think that, you know, my car could actually end up looking like this, but, you know, after all that hard work, you would expect for it to look like this, right? But overall, I like the look. It was just really different. You know, I didn't think it would look this nice, but you know, that's it for this project. And if you guys ever get the chance, you know, try it for yourself. It's not that hard, and it depends on what vehicle you have. The difficulty will vary, but overall, you know, like, share, subscribe to this channel. Share this video to others who you might think would benefit from it. And if anything, take care and do more projects like this.